Are we live? I think we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm running 2 minutes late. Let me get my video set up here. But I'm going to be honest, I'm really, really psyched to do this one. And the reason I'm 2 minutes late is I was working on it literally up until about 30 seconds ago. I'm not going to lie, I sometimes procrastinate on these kinds of things. And it wasn't for lack of material. I sat down and started outlining this a while back and just kept dumping stuff into a big PowerPoint template I have, or not even a template, just a big outline. And it's one of those things that every time I got one thing put to bed and figured out how I wanted to talk about it, I discovered three more things I wanted to talk about. So it was a challenge to stay on top of the avalanche of stuff. I mean, if you are into Web3 at all, you know that it's just overwhelming. That's part of the reason we're doing this course, is to teach people how to make sense of all this stuff. A lot of garbage out there. You know, I say that in the very intro for this course, but there's a lot of really cool stuff too. And so really just for the last several hours, I've been going through and making sense of all my notes and my outlines and taking screenshots and rearranging and thinking about how I want to say stuff. And I am psyched, and I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So first of all, here's me again. And the title of this one is NFTs, Tokens, Protocols, and DAOs Explained. That's a mouthful. It's a lot of buzzwords. We're going to do our best to get through them quickly. I don't want you to be listening to this podcast or watching a video for 2 hours. I want to burn through this quickly, because you can always just go back and watch it again. You can hit rewind 15, 30 seconds on your podcast player. So we're going to cover a lot, but it's juicy, and you'll be able to download the PDF later. So a couple things. I'm going to do a quick commercial for REIDAO, R-E-I DAO. It stands for Real Estate Investing DAO. We are a collaborative real estate investing platform for experienced and trustworthy operators who work together to identify, acquire, and manage commercial real estate. There's two components to this. One is it's a collaboration platform. So if you are someone who wants to learn about real estate, maybe you've already done a few deals, or you're a junior partner on some deals, but now you want to be more of a senior or a general partner type, this is the place for you. You can come in here, raise your hand, demonstrate your expertise, demonstrate that you're trustworthy, and work with us to find and close deals together. It's also a platform for passive investors to buy and sell fractions of assets owned by REIDAO. Now, right now, we don't own any assets. So this is truly a ground floor opportunity. And we're less focused on that second point, the passive investors. Right now, we're mostly focused on the active investors, getting those people involved and creating that breeder reactor of opportunities. But we know that if we go out and work together, we can find good deals, and we can structure them in such a way that the passive investors will be psyched to invest in them. I always tell investors, I don't want them to be kind of into investing. I want them to be psyched to invest with us. And that's what we do. We work together to find deals that you are just psyched to be a part of. And I'll just reiterate, it's not an expensive coaching session. It's not some mastermind. I'm not trying to get you to pay me $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 for my super secret expertise. Instead, I want you to meet each other, meet me, meet the other people in this group, and learn from each other, because I found that really going all the way back to when I first got out of college, which, by the way, I didn't learn a single thing in college. I don't know about you. It wasn't until I got out and started talking to other people about what it is I wanted to actually do with my life that I learned some things, and that's part of the philosophy of REIDAO. Okay, so one other thing is, if you need to watch a replay of this, remember that you can always log into reidao.community, reidao.community, and go to the course and click on the resources tab. That's where we have replays. That's where we have PowerPoint. Actually, we turn it into a PDF, but you can download it. So that's your go-to place for this information. And also, I'm just going to advertise myself a little bit. I've been lately really getting into LinkedIn as a way to connect with people. I was just down in Bentonville, Arkansas, home of Walmart. I met a lot of folks at a conference down there. We exchanged a lot of LinkedIn credentials. So go to linkedin.com/in/DJ Scruggs. That's my name, DJ Scruggs. And you can connect with me there. And then also I have a Substack, realweb3.substack.com. And I encourage you to subscribe to it. That's where I talk about a lot of this stuff. I work out some of the ideas, not just on my own, but I talk to a lot of other people, and I will bring their ideas into this. So I would love it if you would subscribe. It's free. And I'm a Gen Xer. You can see this picture here. This is from the early days of the internet. I mean, I've been on the internet since 1993 in one form or another. I started my first company in 1995. I've seen a lot of trends. I've seen a lot of bubbles too. So on one hand, it's been really elucidating. It's helped me see patterns. On the other hand, sometimes I feel really old when I see people using some of these new tools. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, for some reason here we go. All right. So let's talk about protocols. So, the title of this is Tokens, Protocols, DAOs, Explain, NFTs. So just very quickly, let's just review some basic concepts. What is a protocol? A protocol is just an agreed mechanism for communication of some sort, right? In the human world, it gives an example of someone saying hi, and you respond hi, and they ask what time, and you tell them the time. That's a protocol. In diplomatic circles, there's all kinds of protocols around who the president talks to versus the Secretary of State, and who visits whom, and what diplomats are allowed to do and what diplomats aren't allowed to do, and all that stuff. Those are human protocols. Of course, we have other types of protocols, and more and more, these are the ones that govern our lives. These are internet protocols or technical protocols, right? So a computer network protocol is the same thing. It's a communications mechanism. It's an agreed way of communicating. And this just diagrams, making a TCP connection. You make a request, and the server that you make the request to responds and sends you the information you need, and so on. There's lots of different types of protocols. We're going to talk mostly about internet ones, but one that is especially salient for us is the SWIFT protocol. Whenever you hear about sanctions being placed on, lately you hear a lot about sanctions placed on Russia or maybe Iran. Really what they're talking about is the SWIFT banking protocol. This is a system that allows me, John Doe, over here in the lower left corner, to send a payment through my bank all the way around the globe to someone else to get paid, right? That's the SWIFT banking system. And there's a lot of different steps in here. I won't bore you going through all the details, but the idea is that we have these protocols that are a combination of electronic but also human. There are rules, the international rules that determine, well, can I send money to an oligarch who's been sanctioned? That's part of the protocol in a sense. There are certain rules that these systems follow. So if you're an oligarch, maybe you don't like it so much. For the rest of it, it's not so important. But just to give you a sense of how protocols govern, they already govern finance. There's all kinds of protocols that we're just not even aware of that determine how money moves. And when you get into the weeds, I just showed you a quick diagram, but they are very complex. If you get into protocols, if you're a programmer or ever worked on an engineering type problem, there's a lot of detail, lots of little pieces of information that are important to making up the protocol. And it's always been the case. And, as humanity moves forward, as our technological systems move forward, they get more and more complex, but they also get more and more reliable, because the more we put them in the computer, as opposed to humans trying to remember them, the better off we are. So this is just to give you an idea of what really goes on underneath the covers of our protocol. Let's talk about some of the protocols you may know or you interact with. So one, TCP/IP, you may have heard of that. That's basically the packets. Those are the ones and zeros that are underlying. Right now, I'm communicating to you on YouTube. There's video, there's audio. You've got a web page that's rendering it. That all boils down to ones and zeros, and those are all use the TCP/IP protocol, which, by the way, itself isn't a single protocol. It's made up of 7 layers. There's multiple layers to protocols. We'll touch on layers in a little bit. HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transport Protocol. If you're looking at a website, you are using HTTP. It was created by Tim Berners-Lee. If you're into that kind of thing, the W3C Foundation. He was a researcher at CERN, wanted to make it easier for physics scientists to communicate, and he created this thing that became known as the World Wide Web. And boy, has a lot changed since those days. I think think it might have been 1992 when he did it. Could have been earlier, but it certainly really started to take off in around 94, 95. SMTP, that's for sending email. SMTP, Simple Mail Transport Protocol. So again, that's something that started out as just kind of a simple way to communicate, and it's turned into this massive, massive infrastructure that allows global communications. And I thought I had another one. Oh, IMAP. IMAP is retrieving and sending and managing email. So when you log in to your email, you're almost certainly using IMAP. Gmail is a web page, but it actually uses IMAP under the covers. So these are the protocols that we live with and deal with every day. So let's talk about some crypto protocols. So Bitcoin is the original, the OG cryptocurrency. And Ethereum is also a protocol, but it's not just a currency. It's also smart contracts. I'll explain what smart contracts are in a little bit. And then there's others. There's a bunch of different cryptocurrencies. Some of the ones you may have heard of: Binance, Solana, Avalanche, Algorand is one that I like, Cosmos, and there's literally hundreds more. These are all protocols. Fundamentally, that's what they are, as a protocol. So when you hear someone talking about doing a swap using a protocol, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about either the cryptocurrency itself or what's built on top of the cryptocurrency in the form of smart contracts. With Ethereum, I'm going to mostly focus on Ethereum tonight because Ethereum is far and away the largest of the smart contract protocols. Bitcoin Bitcoin is more like digital gold or digital reserve currency. You know, I'm not really interested in arguing about it. There's a lot of people who have thoughts on that, but it's certainly different from Ethereum. And Ethereum not only has the base Ethereum protocol, which is where tokens and NFTs come from, but there's also something called layer 2s. You might hear someone talk about an L2 for Ethereum. And basically what an Ethereum is, what a layer 2 is, it's a specialized, they sometimes call it a roll-up. So it's a protocol that runs on top of another protocol. Remember I talked about TCP/IP being actually 7 layers of zeros and ones flowing back and forth. Ethereum layer 2s are basically roll-up protocols that they may take a bunch of transactions that you don't need to do on Ethereum itself. You just need the results of those transactions on Ethereum. Ethereum provides the basic security model and the single source of truth, but you might use a layer 2 to do these protocols. They're specialized, they're faster. Sometimes they focus on different things. Some are more privacy focused. Some use a method that's called a side chain, which is kind of deep in the weeds, but it's just a different type of blockchain that resolves down to Ethereum. They don't necessarily do everything Ethereum does. That's why they're specialized. Like they may not be able to do certain types of smart contracts or certain types of NFTs because that's not what they're for. So you should, if you're looking at using an L2 for something, you obviously want to make sure that it does what you need it to do, obviously. So some examples, these are names you may have heard about: Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, Loopring, ZK rollups. There's a bunch of these out there. These are all really recent. I mean, pretty much all of these are within the last 12 months. So it's still very early days. So it's too early to know like which horse you should bet on, which one you should really spend your time thinking about. But you should know that there's a bunch of them out there, and some of them do have significant mind share. I will say the bad thing about this, and it's kind of soured me on Ethereum recently, is it creates a lot of confusion, right? I'm just going to show you what I mean. The wallet experience with Ethereum kind of sucks. It's always been a little janky, but adding these layer 2s has made it even more complicated. So I've got a little animated GIF I'm showing here that shows me switching between different chains, right? You go up to the top, you click the name of the chain you want to switch to. And when you do that, it shows your assets that you own, the tokens you own, and that changes, right? And it can be, it doesn't seem like that big a deal if you think of it like bank accounts, like what have I got in my Chase account versus my Bank America account. I guess you could sort of think of it that way. But where it gets really annoying is with the different apps or dApps you might use. It'll ask you to connect your wallet, and your wallet maintains state with whatever chain it's currently connected to. So you'll try to log in, and it'll say, sorry, you need to switch to Optimism or Arbitrum or back to Ethereum. And, that's just really annoying. Can you imagine if you were logging into Facebook or Google and it said, yeah, no, you're using the at form of email address. We're going to use the pound form. That's something I just made up. That's the kind of thing that just sort of slows down adoption. So I'm not a big fan of L2s, but they are here to stay. And I'm hoping that all the smart people working on these will make them easier for us to use. So tokens. There's a couple of acronyms you need to know about that you'll see a lot when you're talking about tokens and NFTs and so on. So one is EIP, which stands for Ethereum Improvement Proposal. So I'll give an example of an EIP in a moment, but this is based on the way the web developed. There's a standard, or not even a standard. It's like a protocol for standards called RFC, Request for Comments. And so when the web was developing and they were adding all these neat new features like JavaScript or CSS and things like that, it went through something called an RFC, a Request for Comments, where people would outline exactly what it is they want it to do, and people could comment. That's what the request is for, is to get comments. And then over time, they solidify it, and it'll still be called an RFC, but they're not really taking comments anymore. So EIP is basically kind of like an RFC. Sometimes you'll also see ERC, which is an Ethereum Request for Comments. It's not 100% clear to me what the difference of these things are when I was researching it. I think Ethereum EIP is more at the base layer of Ethereum, whereas ERC is on top of that. But I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't quite see the difference between them. Whatever. Most of the time, you'll hear about ERCs. Now, tokens are, and I'll give you some examples of ERCs in a moment, but tokens, fundamentally, what you need to know is that a token is a smart contract on Ethereum. And a smart contract, I've got a simple definition here from Investopedia. It's basically just a self-executing contract with the terms of the agreement directly written into lines of code, right? So a very simple example is a vending machine, right? You don't go talk to someone, you just put your money in and you push a button and a drink comes out if everything's working correctly. That essentially is a smart contract, but we take that concept on the internet, and you imagine the massive worldwide scale of the internet just creates all kinds of potential beyond getting a soft drink, although that's the one thing you probably can't do with smart contracts right now because it's all pretty virtual. So let's talk about ERC20. When you hear about tokens, you may, if you've been in this space for a while, you may have heard about ICOs, initial coin offerings. Those were all the rage back in 2017, and those use what are called our ERC20s, Ethereum Request for Comments 20 tokens. A token is basically, it's like a currency or a stock. It kind of, depending on how it's used, it can behave either way. So obviously, if you own a bunch of shares of Apple, you could, in theory, use that for a currency, I guess. If you came to me and offered to pay for something with Apple stock instead of dollars, I might take it. But that's one way to look at it. Another is as a currency, and I'll show an example of a currency in a moment that essentially is an ERC20 token. It's the same as every other token, just like a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. You don't care, just as long as they're all legal tender, you don't care, they're all the same. So that's what an ERC20 token is. It's very simple. An example of a very popular ERC20 token is MakerDAO, or DAI it's called, but it's from the MakerDAO, the Maker Foundation. They have something called MakerDAO. And in this picture, I underline smart contracts just to emphasize. Basically, the way Maker works is you take Ethereum. They support other assets too, but most of what they do is with Ethereum. And let's say I want to get something that is guaranteed to always be worth $1, a US dollar. I can deposit Ethereum with Maker, and then they will give me dollars back, but they over collateralize it. So kind of like when you buy a house, they will loan you, as up to 95% of the value of the house, depending on certain circumstances, but more commonly 80 or 75%. You have to put in some money and they give you back the debt and they take ownership of the house or a lien on the house. That's kind of how DAI works, except it's much more over collateralized because Ether is so volatile. I think it's typically 2 to 1. So if I want to get $100 of DAI out, I need to put in $200 worth of Ethereum. And this diagram here shows what happens. And I'm not going to bore you to death going through it, but it's clearly much more complicated than me just handing someone some tokens or some bills like I might at a currency exchange if I'm traveling abroad. It's a series of smart contracts that all operate programmatically. An example of what they do is they take that Ethereum you gave them and they lock it up, right? So it's still kind of sort of in your name, but you can't get it back until you repay the DAI you got from it. Or if the price of Ethereum goes down too much, they will liquidate it, right? This is kind of how in the stock market you may know about margin trading. You get a loan against some stock you own, and you may go out and double down and invest more in stock. It's a very risky strategy, but a lot of people do it. And if everything's going up, it's great. But if the stock goes down, then all of a sudden that stock you thought you owned, you don't own anymore. The brokerage sells it, and you're out of money. MakerDAO does that, essentially the same thing, but it's all automated. It's very neat. This is one of the original truly useful smart contracts, and there's now billions of DAI. That's the stable coin circulating. So that's an ERC20. Now let's talk about an ERC721 non-fungible tokens. I'm sure you've probably heard of NFTs. Those have been all the rage for the last year or so. So let's talk about what makes an NFT. So the first is, unlike with ERC20s, where everything is the same, with NFTs, everyone is unique. It's kind of confusing because if you go on like OpenSea and look at some of these Bored Apes and all these other types of cypherpunks and things like that, they all look kind of the same to me, but they are different. Each one's unique. Some have different colors. Some have what are called traits. They may have one may be wearing a hat, another one isn't. That's a trait. So each one is unique with an NFT. And then the main thing is about it is, unlike with tokens where you can have a bunch of tokens and you can use some of them to buy stuff, with an NFT is more about ownership. You own a unique image or a video or a moment. The NBA Top Shots sort of was the first to capture lightning in a bottle with that. Last year, you could buy these videos of an NBA star making a great play. I've always frankly thought that was a bit dubious, but whatever. If there's a market, then who am I to judge? The World Cup most recently started doing this. They have NFTs using the Algorand blockchain I mentioned earlier, and they are just getting started there. The World Cup is that in November, I believe. It really gets going, and so they're really starting to pump up the idea of you buying a great moment from World Cup history as an NFT. Another use of NFTs is membership. So those Bored Apes I talked about earlier, owning one of those gets you into a club, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which they are promising is going to deliver all kinds of benefits. And maybe it does, but it's just not my scene. So I don't know. But it's not hard to imagine. We do that all the time. We join organizations, we get a membership card, some indicator that, yes, I'm a member of this organization. And so an NFT is a way of indicating membership, regardless of whether you like the artwork or not. The underlying NFT has a lot of use. Or it could be like a ticket to an event. Again, that would help a lot with preventing scalping. If you could just buy an NFT to get into an event, that's still super early days. I expect within a few years that'll be very common, that pretty much all tickets will be NFTs in order to prevent scalping, because NFTs, because it's a smart contract, when you get one, you can run it, you can validate it against the smart contract and see it's real. You don't have to worry about someone selling you something that's phony. And then if you may have seen a lot of people on Twitter, they will have their name .eth, like actually mine. If you go to my last name, Scruggs.eth, that's the Ethereum name service, kind of like the domain name service, with .com and .net and .org and all of that. And those are basically domain names for crypto wallets. And those are actually a smart contract. They are non-fungible tokens. So you can go buy, which I did. You can buy Scruggs.eth. Well, you can't because I own it, but maybe if you offer me enough, I'll sell it to you. And I own that forever, right? I own that just like I own my computer. So it's not like a domain name service where I have to pay every year to keep it, or and worry that someone might steal it from me, or a national government might decide to block access to my domain name. I own it; it's mine. And then there's a new type that's hasn't really reached fruition yet, but has been getting a lot of chatter, and I think has a lot of potential. So I'll tell you about it, which is the EIP 4671 non-tradable tokens, sometimes called soul-bound tokens, a name that I personally hate. I think it's the silliest, dumbest name ever, but whatever. I'm not the judge of that. That was coined by Vitalik Buterin, one of the creators of Ethereum, and this is kind of like NFTs, but the idea with these is they are not transferable. So unlike with a ticket or a membership or a moment from an NBA game, which I could sell to someone else and then I no longer own and someone else now owns, a soul-bound token is something you can't transfer ever. So an example of that would be identity, right? My driver's license, I can't sell you my driver's license. That's just not the way it works. Same with my birth certificate. Now, people may try to use it. That's how a lot of identity fraud happens. But fundamentally, that's not something you can trade or sell. It's just something that is yours and is always with you forever and ever. It's great for credentials. So obviously something like a diploma that your university issues, that's something you earned and you'll always have for the rest of your life. So it's good for that. If you're an attorney and you pass the bar exam, you've been admitted to the bar, a soul-bound token would be a good fit for that as well. I am actually very bullish on this concept. It's still a draft, and there's a lot of sort of back and forth, people deciding what's the best way to implement this standard. There's a few competing ideas about it. I won't bore you with the details. I think, however, this is like extremely important, that identity is one of the biggest things that's sort of hurting Web3 adoption right now. So once that shakes out and we all agree on some standards, I think that's really going to turbocharge things. And that sort of leads me to the most important concept. I'm talking about tokens and NFTs and a little bit DAOs, but what really makes all this work is not just that it's written into code, it's in software code, but that it's visible on chain, meaning you don't have to take my word for anything. Just like if you ask for my license, I pull it out and show it to you. I would never just say, trust me, bro, I'm allowed to drive, right? That's not how the real world is. And that's how it is with tokens and NFTs and things like that. Is I could say I have something, but why not prove it? And everything is visible on chain. And that opens a world of possibility. And that's why I'm so excited about this technology going into the future. So let's show an example of something on chain, MakerDAO. So as I said, the DAI is it's an actual smart contract. It's an actual address on the Ethereum blockchain. All Ethereum smart contracts and tokens start with a 0x. I don't really know why that is, but there's some reason for it. And you can see it's this extremely long, ugly, 28, 30 something digits there. You would never memorize it. That's part of why crypto is so powerful, is it's not something you can just memorize and fake. But that address is something that anyone can go look at. So I've got a screenshot here. In a minute, I'm going to pop over into my browser to show you. But if you look, this is a screenshot of my browser. And if you look at where the arrow is at the top, that it says Ethereum, etherscan.io/token/ and then 0x6b. That's the same address I showed you a moment ago. And this shows you everything that's happening with that contract, right? So I can show you. Well, I can't because I don't have any right now, but I could show you if I bought some DAI, I could show you the moment when I bought it. So let's switch gears here. I'm going to go into my, that was weird. Let me go into my browser and walk you through some of this stuff. Let's go here. Okay. So I showed you a screenshot, but this is real time. What's happening with DAI. Right? So I'm just going to reload it, and you can see here's something from 19 seconds ago. Here's something from 31 seconds ago. This shows the from and the to, meaning who sent it and where they sent it and how much. Lots of numbers here. Most of it is impossible to sort of make sense of when you're looking at it. A little bit, you may have heard of Uniswap, and it looks like Uniswap. There's a transaction here happening through Uniswap. Crypto.com is doing something. If you've seen the ads on the Super Bowl with Matt Damon, that's what they are. So, there's a little bit of insight you can get from here. But what you're really looking at, this is kind of like looking at a database, the raw data of a database. It's not very attractive. But nonetheless, what's cool about it is it's not in a database somewhere. It's in the Ethereum blockchain, which means that no one can control it. This is literally on millions of computers spread around the world. No one person has control of this. Which means that you can trust it in a sense, right? No one controls it, but it also means that you can aggregate it. You can build some really cool charts using this data and do some deep analysis of what's happening in the blockchain world, which is immensely useful. If you go back to the 2008 financial crisis, I've heard different people say different things about it, but fundamentally the problem there, and I'm not talking about the problem with mortgages or securitization, the meta problem, or the problem that enabled that problem, was lack of visibility. So when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, what really was going on there is that they owed a bunch of people money, but no one knew exactly who they owed money to. Right? And there's people who owed them money too. So there's all these players on Wall Street that owed each other money, but they had no real visibility into who controlled what and who was exposed, right? Well, if Lehman goes under, that means someone's not going to get paid, which means they're not going to be able to pay someone else, which means they're not going to be able to pay someone else. So you had this gridlock situation on Wall Street, and that's why there was bailouts. Whatever you think of the bailouts, that's why the government had to provide so much liquidity that even if Lehman Brothers and others went under, it wasn't going to create a chain reaction. And I've heard it said that, what I think they invested, I don't know, what was it, like $800 billion that was used to sort of stabilize the markets, maybe more. I can't remember the numbers. But when they unwound all the transactions, it turned out they could have done it for less than $10 billion. Still a lot of money, but not $800 billion. And if they had just known, look, these are the guys, they owe these guys money, they owe those guys money. Let's just write a check, get their balance sheet, and then put some new rules in place so they don't do that again. It would have saved us a fortune. So that's why I say this is the most important thing you need to understand about tokens and NFTs is everything is transparent. Everything is online. And that changes the way people behave, right? Both, maybe they're less likely to take risks than they would otherwise, or they're more likely to take risks because they can see, what the market action is. So let me show you a couple other things. So, I mentioned, when you start aggregating this data, like what I was showing you was kind of like looking at the raw data in a database, but here's an organization, DeFi Pulse, that takes that data and helps you make sense of it. So these are different, I mentioned MakerDAO, Curve, Aave, Uniswap. You may have heard of some of these. These are various different DAOs and they sometimes call them automated market makers or decentralized exchanges. The fundamental thing is these are all just, at the end of the day, they're smart contracts, right? Like I said earlier. So because they're smart contracts, that means they're on chain and anyone can see what's going on. And so you can look and do different analysis of like how many different users there are, right? Just by counting the different wallets. You can find out what they call total value locked, TVL. Total value locked, TVL. So this basically means, there's $7.8 billion worth of Ethereum that's been locked up with MakerDAO in exchange for DAI. That's a useful thing to know, right? If that number goes up, that shows confidence. If that number goes down, that shows less confidence. So this is what I mean by things being on chain. It just allows you this incredible visibility that is just unheard of. Wall Street is really good at creating, at spitting out a lot of data and creating charts, but nothing at this detail, this incredible level of detail. That's what is amazing to me about this kind of technology. So that's all kind of abstract, but let's talk about a real example here using real estate. Now, this is from Lofty.ai. I'm going to show you more about them next week when we get into some of the different major players. But they use the Algorand blockchain to track their assets, right? And so this is actually, I've logged into my account, and these are some assets I own. I don't own a lot. I've basically put a little bit of money into this. That's one of the great benefits of this technology is you don't have to put in $50,000, $100,000. I can put in, I think my total investment is $265 to date. But because it's on the chain, I can click through. This is their rendering of it, but I can just click through if I want and go to the Algo Explorer. That's kind of like Etherscan for Algorand. And I can see all the transactions that are happening there, right? These are all the different tokens for these properties I own. And gee whiz, I can see exactly what's going on. And not everything, people aren't paying rent with crypto. That's still all being done in dollars. But the things I care about as an investor, like how many people bought shares, did anyone sell their shares? Have I gotten my distributions yet? What distributions have they been paying out over time? That's incredibly useful information. And especially when you start aggregating it, right? So this property I showed you is in Chicago, the great city of Chicago, where I lived for 12 years. I love that place. Here's another one I own that's in Cleveland. But what if I owned 24 in Chicago? It would be pretty neat to do a chart that shows all these different assets I own in Chicago and how well they're performing, right? That would be incredibly useful data. And that's why the on-chain part of this stuff is so exciting, is it's going to allow us to get a real-time idea of different types of assets. I'm, of course, most involved with real estate, but you can imagine all types of assets being tracked this way and helping us make better decisions because we have a deeper insight into what's happening with those assets. Now, just very quickly, I touched on Bored Apes. I think it's crazy the money people have spent on these things. I just don't get it, but maybe that's because I'm just amazingly uncool and unhip. Nonetheless, it's interesting to look at these and just to sort of explain again the on-chain part of this. So this is OpenSea. They're a very popular marketplace for trading these different NFTs. But all they are is really just a view into the blockchain, right? It's just a web interface. That's why I think instead of Web 3, we should call it Data 3 or Data 2. Because from a web perspective, there's really nothing different about using Web 3. It's about the data that underlies what you see. So I'm looking at it on OpenSea, but I can go over here to Rarible, which is another marketplace, and see the exact same thing, right? So unlike with eBay, where if I had one of these things listed, I could only buy it on eBay. Here, I can buy it anywhere. I can buy it off OpenSea. I can buy it off Rarible. There's other platforms. I could build my own platform for buying and selling these things or displaying these things. So that's pretty neat. That's what's really cool. And I think that's part of what got so many people excited about NFTs is the fact that you can just transport these around and there's no hidden database at work, right? There's no having to pay Amazon or Facebook or someone for access to this stuff. Now, let me show a potential use case for these technologies that I think isn't talked about enough. So this is RayDAO, which I did a nice little pitch for at the beginning. And with RayDAO, we're still working on this, but this uses a platform called guild.xyz is where it's at. And you can use these NFTs and tokens to gate things, right? I can gate content. So I could say, what if let me connect my wallet and I'll show you what I mean. What if I wanted to give special access to some of these Bored Ape people, right? Like maybe, whoops, wrong password. Let me try this again. Okay. So what if, this is where like you can imagine like, I don't know, a club. You can think of a high-end nightclub. And you know that people who own Bored Apes probably have a lot of money. Those things are expensive, right? And so you might want to give them special VIP access merely for owning that that Bored Ape. And what's cool is I don't have to talk to anyone at Bored Ape to do that, right? I can just do that because it's on the chain. So I could say, let's go create a way here to give those people special access. So I can use this. I can add a role, and what I would want to do, I'm just going to say Bored Ape wipe. See special access, right? And I won't bother filling this in. And then I could say, okay, what I want is I only want to give this to people that own Bored Apes. So if I click NFT here, it gives me the option of chains. So let's see. I'm going to choose Ethereum. And then I'm just going to search for Bored Ape. Let's see. Here it is, Bored Ape Yacht Club. And this thing isn't 100%. If I had gone and copied that contract address, it would be 100%. This thing doesn't always search that well, but Guild's a fairly new one. So I could say, look, I want to make sure that they have at least one of these because you can own more than one Bored Ape. Great. And then, so if you have that, then I want to give you access to something, right? So I could create an allow list that has you on it. What else have they got? They've got other things here. If I can, integrations. So these are different apps they integrate with. So I could, let's see, I could give you access to a Twitter account, or let's see what unlocked does. Nope, doesn't unlock. Well, shoot. I know that you can use this for things like Google Docs, but for some reason I'm not seeing it here. I might just be looking at it and don't even realize I'm looking at it. But in any case, what I could do is say, okay, because you own Bored Ape, I'm going to allow you to see my super secret presentation or super secret video that only Bored Ape members get. And voila, I have now taken advantage of someone else's on-chain credentials to give them access to special resources. That's sometimes heard, you might hear the phrase token gating. I've gated access using a token, in this case, an NFT. So that's pretty neat, right? But here's where it gets really cool. This is where we're going to be segueing next week into real estate. So the NFT with Bored Apes, if you go over here, you can see that, like if I click on this one, it's got, I mentioned traits, right? It's got these little properties like the background color, what kind of clothing. You can see it's a yellow background. He's wearing a biker vest. What's the style of the eyes? He's got 3D glasses on. So that's pretty neat. But what if you're talking about real property, right? And this is James McCall, who is a member of Lex DAO. He's got a DAO called Tater DAO and Cougar DAO. These are real estate DAOs that we're friends with and working with Ray DAO. And what he did is he took a property that he owns. He owns some farmland up in Idaho, and put it on chain, and he put some information to it. And so if you go look, you can click through, and it shows some of this information. And again, this cuts across websites, right? So I'm looking at it on OpenSea, but I can go over to Rarible. I can reload, see the exact same thing on Rarible. Again, the key thing here is the contract address up here, which shows it. We can see it's got the same picture here. It's got these different properties. His stuff it's geared toward farming, so obviously a lot of the land classification is geared toward farming stuff. He's got a link to the deed to the property using IPFS. He has the name of the LLC that owns the property. And, again, this is the web interface into the data. If you want to see the raw data, you can do that. This is all on IPFS. And so this information here, this description is the exact same as the description you would see here. He's got these different traits here. These are the exact same ones as we saw earlier. So again, this is what it means when I say we're going to put real estate on chain. This is it. We've put it on chain. And, it's kind of neat, like I said, but again, once we have thousands and eventually tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of properties on chain, it changes the way you think about this information. And I'll show you an example of what I mean. So right before doing this this presentation, one thing I do with PowerPoint when I'm doing a live video is if you click present, it takes up the whole screen. It goes into full screen mode. That's fine if you're at an event and you've got like a monitor down there and you're standing in front of people and you can look up and see what you're clicking on. That's terrible if you're doing what I'm doing, which is talking into a camera. I need to be able to switch scenes, maybe switch views. And but because it's taking up all of my screen, I can't see anything else that's going on, right? So it turns out PowerPoint has a way to do that. You can put it full screen, but inside a window. And I always forget how to do it. Fortunately, all I do is Google show PowerPoint in a window instead of full screen, and it tells me, and that's what I do. Now, this is a silly, trivial example of how Google has changed us, right? That might have been something that I would have had to learn and just remembered decades ago, or maybe I would have read a book about it and bookmarked it so that the next time I run into this problem, it's like, oh crap, how do I do that again? Where's that book? And I'd have to go dig it up. But now it's just, let me pop it up in Google. And you know, I've outsourced cognition. I've outsourced my memory to Google. And by putting real estate assets on chain, we're going to sort of outsource and make visible, surface some really useful information going forward. And you know, right now it's all very novel. It's like, here, let me show you this one little thing on OpenSea, this one little thing on Rarible. But someday it's going to be, let me search for all the multifamily properties in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is where I just was for their wonderful tech conference. And let me see what the average return is on multifamily properties in Bentonville, Arkansas. And it's going to be just voila. I just pop up a chart and I can see all of that. I can look at it over time. How is it this year compared to last year? That's amazingly powerful information. And that's what this technology is going to enable. So let's switch back now. We're coming down the home stretch. I appreciate your sticking with me. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and skip ahead here. And let's just talk about, oh, I did. We went to the browser. I forgot to show you this slide. So we can check this off. And now let's talk about DAOs. I've sort of alluded to DAOs a little bit. Obviously, RayDAO is a DAO. And so let me just explain what those are. And I'll go into this in more detail next week in the when we dive into specific projects, because a lot of those are DAO projects. So DAO just means decentralized autonomous organization. It's got a long history going all the way back to 2017 with the launch of Ethereum. They launched what they called the DAO, which was rather disastrous. There was a bug in the contract that just caused all kinds of mayhem. But nonetheless, the concept caught on, and in recent years, they've really taken off. So the key characteristics of a DAO as opposed to like a company or a nonprofit, there's no single owner, right? It's owned by the collective. Now, translating that into legal ownership is still kind of a muddy process, but it's moving forward. The states of Delaware and Wyoming are leading the way on that. So I think over time we'll see that this get commemorated in a much stronger legal framework. But there's no single owner. So even though I'm the face in many cases of RayDAO, I'm the one out talking about it, I don't own it. Everyone who's a member owns it. So let's see. So it has some version of governance. So that's member voting, right? Again, that's kind of like a corporation. You know, when you own shares, you can vote on it. Some nonprofits, I'm not sure how many, but maybe some allow you to vote, although that's usually more by the board. But there's some kind of governance system that allows people to vote to make decisions on things. It provides a public good. This is the most important part of DAOs, I think, that a lot of people miss. So what is a public good? So in the real world, a public good will be something like the sewage system, the roads, the transportation system. You know, it doesn't make sense organizationally to have us all go dig our own sewage systems and build our own roads. Instead, we pay taxes and the government provides public goods. Well, DAOs do that for specific types of goods. So some examples. MakerDAO, of course, their public good is dollar-denominated stablecoin. That's really useful. Wouldn't make sense for one company to own that. We'd be very suspicious of a company that owned that. Like imagine if Facebook were offering this. They actually tried to offer that, and the government hauled them in and said, you're going to have to explain yourself. They had this idea called Diem. That's not something we would want a single company or entity to own. We want that to be more collectively owned. Uniswap is a tool that allows you to do trading of tokens. Take this one token and dump it into a pool and get out some other tokens. Global Coin Research, very near and dear to my heart. I'll talk about them in a moment. But they basically are a collective of people who crowdsource and analyze crypto investment opportunities. And then Cabin, which is, if you're into real estate, you may have heard of them. They are a network of co-living properties. You can create a neighborhood. You join Cabin, and you can nominate yourself to be a neighborhood. People vote on it, and it provides, using NFTs, you can provide access to certain facilities, and people will pay rent and all that. Global Coin Research, I wanted to touch on real quick because this is really the inspiration of RayDAO. I'm a member. I own tokens in Global Coin Research. It's fantastic. It's a great way to sort of see how investment DAOs work. They are every week looking at a half dozen different projects, and they have a whole process that goes from, you can bring a project to them and people vote on whether to take a closer look. If so, they have the founders come on and pitch. And then they have a due diligence period, and then they give their thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's thumbs up, then you have the right to invest in it, and it's really cool. It's basically an on-chain venture capital fund, and that's what really inspired me to start RayDAO. And I'm going to wrap up on this slide and just explain, what is the why behind RayDAO? What are we, and what's the public good we provide? So we're not actually tokenized yet, and it's not for any nefarious reason. It's mainly because, I showed you all those different chains and L2s and kind of the confusion around different types of NFTs and different types of tokens. So it's mostly because I just want to be really thoughtful and make sure that we choose the best system. So we're still looking at lots of different options for what's the best way to tokenize it, but it's something we will do. And it's a community of learners and investors in Web3 real estate. The public goods that we provide, why we are a DAO and not just a company or a coaching program, is that it's unbiased education on real estate and tokenization. So I'm here tonight giving you some education about what tokenization is and what Web3 real estate is, but I'm just one guy. If you want to come in and do your own presentation about something, if you're a member of RayDAO, you can do it. You can just set up a course and start teaching. You could even charge money for it. So we're going to allow just let 1,000 points of light shine. So, I'm going to be offering soon a training program on underwriting for multifamily. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think I know a lot about it. But do I know everything about it? Do I know about underwriting in certain markets? Do I understand how to underwrite in Florida where they have hurricanes and higher insurance costs? Do I understand how to underwrite in Texas where they have higher property taxes? Not really. So maybe if we wanted to do a special course just on underwriting in those markets, we could do that. But it wouldn't be me. It would be someone who actually knows about those markets. So that's really the direction we want to go with this. Unbiased education. Background checked expert. So I haven't talked as much about this, but basically when you join, there's going to be a couple levels you can join. One is sort of the observer level, which is what you're doing now. You can watch, you can participate at a superficial level in conversations and things. But if you want to actually do one of those presentations I mentioned or do a deal, then you have to go through a background check. We want to make sure that everyone's here has not committed securities fraud, is not a felon on parole, that there's some baseline level of trust you can expect working with someone in the group. Crowdsourced expertise to create general partnerships. That basically means we go out and find and buy properties. So I mentioned, I don't know how to underwrite in Texas, but if I found someone that I trust who knows how to underwrite in Texas and they brought me a deal, I'm going to get in on it, or at least I'm going to think about getting in on it. And by having a DAO, we can all see more deals and learn more faster than if we're all working in our own little silos. And then finally, the low-cost tokenization. We'll talk about that more in the fourth week, but tokenization is really cool, but it's actually kind of expensive right now. It can cost you thousands of dollars to tokenize a real estate asset. I won't go into the reasons now, but a lot of it has to do with legal and just kind of the structure, the way the industry is set up right now. It's not super efficient. We are working on ways to make it super efficient, much lower cost, much faster, easier, more trustworthy. you name it. Lots of things that will make it so much better. And that's what RayDAO is for. And on that note, I think we're done. Yes, we are done. So I want to thank you all for joining. I said this would be fast. It's been 55 minutes. I thought it'd be more like 30 minutes. But as you can tell in my voice, I'm really excited about this. We're just scratching the surface. We're extremely early into this market. So don't feel at all like, oh, it's too late. I've already missed it. We are just getting started. This is like when someone first got the idea to build casinos in Las Vegas, or build a housing development in California in the 1920s and 1930s. That's where we are. There's literally trillions of dollars in value out there. But I guess the thing I want to leave you with is that value doesn't just happen, right? We're going to go out and create it. So this isn't just about, let me buy some Bitcoin and hope the number goes up, right? The purpose of tokenization is not just to kind of hope that you can get around having to actually work and build a profitable investment portfolio. You're still going to have to work. It's just these tools are going to make it easier and faster and more transparent and more fun. It's going to make it easier for us to all do this and do it fast. So I am psyched to be presenting this information to you. I'm psyched that you're here listening to it. And please tell your friends. If you don't like it, tell your enemies. I wouldn't mind having some of your enemies come here. And make sure you watch the replay or listen to the podcast, download the slides, and I will see you next